Last time, a man told us what happened to him. Tonight, we get to the evidence he says someone wanted buried.
Within seconds, I had this lump in my throat, and I just went, just one little cough. And out came a blood clot. And in the middle of the blood clot was a thing like a grain of wheat, the size of a grain of wheat.
He says he's not the only one, and they always come the same way, in threes, straight through the walls.
They're described as being working in threes when you come to collect abductees. They always say that. The three of them come and pick you up, they take them through the window. But they can take people through floors and apartment blocks and really thick walls.
A serious researcher, forensic labs, and a book that vanished from Amazon overnight. Let's find out. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Good Trouble Show. I'm Matt Ford. This is part 2 of my conversation with Steve Aspin, author of the book Out of Time, the Intergenerational Abduction Program Explored, and his second book with Dr. Andreas Luck, Investigating the Impossible. Biology offers new answers and insights. If you missed part 1, go back and watch it first because you're going to want to see the full story before you watch this part, which is part 2. Last time, Steve told us what happened to him starting on a building site in rural England when he was 16 and why he believes it runs down his family line. Tonight, we get to the hard part, the physical evidence, the implants, the lab results, and what Steve calls the program, including a claim that should stop you cold. That some of these beings now look, get this, exactly like us, and they walk among us. Let's pick up where we left off. Please welcome again, Steve Aspin. You'll hear people say, oh, there's no physical evidence of this abduction phenomena, but quite to the contrary, there is. There are these things called implants. And for someone that doesn't know anything about this, tell us about implants and tell us about Dr. Roger Leir.
Yeah, the implants, the abductors cite them in abductees. I'm not sure they're in all abductees because I don't know all abductees. I mean, there's millions of them in the world, in the human population. But in my case, I know that I had one here. Right, it's in the cribriform plates.
Can you feel it?
Just where no, not now, but because it's gone. But it's where the olfactory nerve enters the brain, and it is the only part of the brain that's visible through the nasal passages. So not visible, but accessible through the nasal passages. And there's a guy called what's his name? The guy who wrote Dominion Lost. It's a guy called Bruce Rapuano.
Okay.
He's a medical scientist who wrote a book called Dominion Lost and published in 23. He's written a big section in his book about the sighting of implants. And there's another medic called Miller, John Miller. He's in your part of the world. He's as a trauma surgeon. I think he may have retired now, but he wrote a lot of papers about the sighting of implants and generally the things that abductees have wrong with them physically that normal members of the population don't have. But so I take a few quotes from Miller and Rapuano, not Rapuano because he published his book after Out of Time was published, so he isn't included in that. But there's a lot of people have identified these implants, where they're sited and how difficult they are to site there. Because some people, a lot of abductees complain how they're ringing in one ear for a few seconds each day, and it's really quite loud. It just comes and increases in volume, and it plateaus, and then it decreases in volume. It's like a very strong single note hum. And some abductees say they have a sound in the other ear that maybe happens at different intervals. Maybe that only goes off once a week or so. But that's a different, maybe it's a higher pitch, which goes off less frequently. So it seems like for those abductees that they might have something placed in both ears. But Rapuano demonstrates how the olfactory, if you want to reach the ear canals without puncturing the eardrum, you have to have instrumentation, very complex instrumentation that goes up the nose and round through the not into the sinus cavities, but round the same passages and go down through the face. And, the ears and nose are joined up. That's why you have ear, nose, and throat surgeons, which are called orontologists or something.
Something like that, yeah.
But Bruce Rapuano demonstrates what the abductors must be doing to manage to do this to abductees, to place these implants. And it makes the point very strongly that they have to have, first of all, extremely sophisticated understanding of human physiology. And secondly, they have to have devoted a lot of time and resources to designing and manufacturing instrumentation to get through these passages in this particular way and site these implants, and then withdraw the instrumentation, will leave no marks in exterior marks. And he says that this is one of the things that proves that this is almost certainly some kind of program where they've invested enormous resources in these very peculiar, eccentric, and intricate surgical procedures and mastering them, because they can do them. The tall greys can do these things. They can put things in right up here. And this cribriform plate area is almost impossibly difficult to operate on by a human surgeon. And it's sometimes, if you try to do it, you kill the patient. So that's why only in a dire emergency is any surgical procedure attempted, and they're extremely risky. But they seem to be at ease with doing these things, And some of the implants are in other parts of the body, but most of them are in the head, in the nose and the ear cavities. That Roger Leir was a podiatric surgeon who was engaged with this endeavor from 1995 to 2014 when he died. So almost 20 years, 19 years.
Yeah.
And he operated on 20 patients during that time. And the 20 abductees claimed they had implants in their bodies. And one of these ended up in the hands of neutron star nanotechnology in California. We've already discussed where the very complex analysis of this objects is detailed in Appendix D of Out of Time, and it's got this extraordinary characteristics. And one of the characteristics of these implants is they contain a lot of iridium and gold and platinum, which iridium is maybe 100 times rarer than gold. It's an extremely rare substance. If you know anything about the Nazca mummies thing in Peru, some of these humanoid reptile mummies had implanted devices in their thoracic cavity. They're osteofused, which means the bones were still growing at the time the implant was put in, and they grew around the implants. The bone has grown around the implants. Mm-hmm. So it was not, the organism was a living being. That's the only way you can get bones to grow around the implants and then mesh it. These were made of iridium. Where they got it from, nobody knows, because no sources of this is known in South America. Yeah. No source of iridium is known, but there they are. they're in these creatures, they're in these mummified creatures. So these implants also contain this metal iridium. And Roger Leir, because he was a podiatric surgeon, he was only surgically licensed and qualified to operate on the legs and feet. And most of the implants he extracted from abductees were from the legs and feet, because they appear in all sorts of different parts of the body. As I said already, it seems like from all the abductees that are all aware of their situation, that the vast majority are in the head and in the ears and the nose and so forth, and some are in the middle of the brain, and some are in the spinal column. But there's a minority do show up in the feet and the legs and so forth. And Roger Leir was licensed to operate on those, and he did surgically remove 20 of them, only one of which was found to be prosaic. It was a piece of glass. But the other 19 were in various degrees exotic and exhibited. As an example, they have shells of woven of hemosiderin, protein coagulum, and keratin. And keratin, as you may know, is a substance that's this primary constituent of human hair and nails.
Right.
So it has no purpose being inside the body like that, deep inside the body. They're very complex. They've got carbon nanotubes at the cores and so forth, and they emit radio waves in 3 different frequency bands and so forth, and that stop 4 to 6 weeks after they're removed from the body. So they're very complicated devices, and then some of them are only as large as a grain of wheat.
Wow! And do you know what radio frequencies what those frequencies are?
I don't have them in my head right now, but the frequencies are recorded in Out of Time in Chapter 4.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm just curious on Skinwalker Ranch. You hear a lot about this 1.6 gigahertz thing, and I was curious if that was it. Now, you actually had an implant that was in your nose that kind of blew out or something. Is that right? Yeah,
I had a heavy cold. It was January a couple of years ago. In fact, I was writing Out of Time, actually. It's very, 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 very close to the beginning of Out of Time. And I won't get too graphic, but I had a head full of mucus, and I just went and just try and clear my chest. And within seconds, I had this lump in my throat, and I just went, just one little cough. And out came a blood clot. And in the middle of the blood clot was a thing like a grain of wheat, the size of a grain of wheat. And it was in the wash basin in the bathroom. And I was so determined to get rid of it, because I didn't want my wife to think I was coughing up blood. She'd have it straight down the emergency room, because that's not something I normally do. Because it was quite a big blood clot. I was so determined to get rid of it. I washed it down the basin with gallons and gallons of water. And, we have a septic tank here because we live out in the sticks, and we're not connected to mains drainage. And so it would end up in the septic tank, but there's no way you could retrieve something,
sure.
That size. And so the next day, my nostrils were bleeding. Well, actually, the same evening, but it was late in the evening when I coughed this thing out. And I just went to bed, and I discovered the next morning there's blood all over the pillow, and both nostrils were bleeding, and they bled little bits, not too much, but continuously for 24 hours. And I rolled a piece of tissue like a kitchen roll and pushed it up each nostril in turn, and they're all bloody, and they didn't stop bleeding for 24 hours. So it just occurred to me suddenly, I coughed out an implant, and I washed it down the bloody sink, washed it down the drain.
What do you think these implants are doing? Has any of the analysis sort of, led to any kind of hypotheses about, are these like GPS trackers, for lack of a better way of explaining it?
It used to be thought that they were probably location devices, but the thing is, the ETs have demonstrated techniques of finding abductees wherever they are, and we don't really think they are location devices. They think they're more sophisticated than that, and they seem to be able to assess and measure hormonal levels and mood changes and things like that, and then they send the information back to whoever's upstairs looking at the dials, if that's what they do. But
right.
they're gathering physiological information from body organs and systems, and probably to do with mood control or something like that. They're more sophisticated than just location devices. That's for sure.
I want to talk about, you've spoken about the grays, and I think that's the thing that most people hear about, these little gray beings. I want you to walk us through and I think this is in chapter 9, you talk about other species of non-human intelligence. For people, again, totally new to this, what are those other species? What do they look like? Before we get back to our guest, real quick, if you're not subscribed, hit that button, ring the bell, leave a comment, give us a thumbs up. I know it sounds like a lot, but here's why it matters. YouTube sees all of that and basically says to itself, hey, maybe we should recommend this Good Trouble show to people who don't know it exists yet. That's how that works. Also, find us on all the major podcast platforms if you like to listen to us on the go. And if you love our podcast, please leave us a glowing review. And if you don't like the podcast, maybe don't leave a review at all. Also, we have no sponsors on this show, absolutely zero. We are kept alive entirely by people like you. So if you want to help pay the studio rent, which is not cheap here in LA, we are on Patreon at www.patreon.com/The Good Trouble Show. And you can also support us right here on YouTube through memberships or super thanks. It means the world. And finally, took us 3 years, but we have our website up, a one-stop shop where you can find everything Good Trouble at www.thegoodtroubleshow.com. All right, back to the interview with Steve Aspin.
Well, abductees have always reported two types of so-called grey aliens. They're very skinny morphology. They have no visible sexual organs at all. They just go straight down. They have huge craniums, huge heads with very large foreheads and big almond-shaped black eyes, or sometimes they're described as very deep brown, but they're very dark eyes. And their skin tone varies from a tan color, basically like a really light brown, to the grays, to dark gray, through light gray. And then very, very occasionally they're reported as white, being white like a hotel bed sheet, not like a piece of paper, not white like European, Caucasian type skin, which isn't white at all. But these creatures are sometimes described as white skinned. So these come in two sizes. They come in the small size, the small greys, which are about 2'6" or 3 feet tall. They're very skinny, very light. And these creatures are always reported by abductees, or have been until recently, because the phenomenon has changed somewhat in recent years. But they're still part of it. They're described as being working in threes. You always work in threes when you come to collect abductees. They always say that they three of them come and pick you up, and three of them come and pick you back, to take you back. And they escort the abductee. If the abductees sleep, they get her or him awake, and they get them to stand up, and they usually get them to walk into a different room where there's a big window in the house, if there is in the house, and they take them through the window. But they can take people through floors and apartment blocks and really thick walls. It seems that might take a lot more energy than getting themselves and humans through a pane of glass. So they when they have the opportunity, they always take you into a room with a glass window and take you through there because, obviously they find that easier. And they everything levitates, everything doesn't seem to have any, gravity seems to have no influence on you. And you feel you yourself being pulled up. All abductees say this, and that they sometimes see the object above them as they move towards us, and they describe in various kinds of detail, what happens during the abduction events. But when the time comes to go home, so to speak, the same three little greys, take abductees back. So that's their primary job, and they take them by the hand and they walk them around from one procedure to another. If they there's all sorts of complex procedures in abduction events. Like one of the things they occasionally do is immerse an abductee in a tank of liquid, and the abductee's scared to death that he'll drown or she'll drown, but they've discovered they can breathe this liquid in a tank, like a great big round tank, and you're definitely floating in a liquid, but they find that they can breathe this liquid amazingly and not suffocate. So they have all these procedures, and they take you from place to place. Sometimes they place a scanning device on your chest sometimes, and for that they need you to go upright rather than lie on your back. So they sometimes use restraining straps around your ankles and around your forearms to stop you falling over when they scan you with this device. And so as they take you from place to place, a little grey will, or abductees say they're always led by the little greys around from one place to another during the abduction events. And the tall greys are about twice the size of the small ones, but they have the same morphology, very, very skinny bodies and very, very big heads and beyond-shaped eyes. And they tend to do, or sometimes abductees used to refer to them as the doctor, or the one in charge.
Right.
And they do all the complex surgery. They oocyte harvesting from female abductees, sperm collection from male abductees, procedures on the head and the nose and so forth, needle incisions and so forth, anything surgical and manipulative. If they do those, and they also do the mind scan procedures, which is where the one of the tall greys will come right up to the abductee who's lying on the table, and the tall alien will put his eye right up close to the abductee, and they twist their head around like that, until they and sometimes they move around the foot of the table, or the head of the table rather, to get a position, and they try their other eye against yours, and suddenly abductees say they feel this sensation racing through them. They have thousands of thoughts racing through their minds, memories and so forth, and they have feelings of elation, feelings of sexual arousal, feelings of anger, feelings of fear, and all sorts of really strong emotions all happen one after another. And that's when the alien, the abductor, is locking into the optic nerve. One of the things they seem to be able to do is travel down the optic nerve into the brain somehow. Don't ask me how they do this, but they do it. They can do it. And they manipulate the brain, the memory, so that you don't remember anything that's happened during the abduction events, but it's stored in the long-term memory of the abductee, so that you can train your long-term memory. As an example, if you're, I won't ask how old you are, but you say you're 50 or something. If you try to remember an incident that happened when you're 5 years old, not a notable event, a date like your birthday or Christmas Day, but any random date from the calendar, you won't remember it, because none of us do. But it's all in your memory somewhere. It's all stored in there. And if you train yourself to try and think, what day of the week it was, what you were doing, what the weather was like, who you were with, what you were wearing, what your clothes, the clothes were like you were wearing at 5 years old, and all these things like if you really quiz your memory, you ask your memory to it's information about this particular day, and keep at it and keep at it every day. Do 10 minutes on it, and after about 6 weeks, you remember it. You remember the whole day and what you were doing on that date, and who you were with, and what it was like, and what you were feeling. You remember everything. It takes a lot of work. The thing about regressive hypnosis, one of the reasons why it's mildly controversial, is because it's a minefield where it's very easy to lead the subjects into thinking something happened that didn't happen. Whatever the practitioner wants the patient to think. But if it's the only way you can recover your long-term deep buried memories, if that's where they put the abduction events that happened to you last week, you won't find it any other way, because it's buried down there in your memory of when you were 5 years old. And unless you remember the event, link the events to that particular day, you won't you won't retrieve this. It'll be forever buried. And it is buried, it's not lost.
Right.
It's buried. Yeah. The tall greys do those kind of procedures. They've got very sophisticated neurological abilities, and they're also to return to the different types of abductors. There are reptilian-like creatures which are described in various ways by various people. There's do you remember the episode I recounted Out of Time in chapter 9 about Pharaoh Yadoza's great-grandfather?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
He was a teacher at Istanbul University in the 1890s, and in his early 20s. I think he might have just been 20 years old. His young wife had gone off to visit her family for a few days, and he was alone in the house on his own. And he was visited by two huge reptilian entities, like 7 feet tall and very powerfully built. And he used to apparently, Eamon Refik described these, he's long dead now, but he just described these to the family as unmistakable and terrifying. And they talked to him in his mind telepathically, and they wanted him to consent to something or take part in something. And they wouldn't let him go until he agreed to this. And they controlled him physically with their minds, so that he was paralyzed and was unable to move for what he thought was several hours. And at the end of this procedure, these reptilians went up to him and said, "From you to 3 generations." And they left. And this is interesting, because Eamon Refik was living. He was born about the same time as my great grandmother, who was born in 1873. So she would have been 17 years old in 1890, and or 1893 she would have been 20. So she was sort of the same generation as Eamon Refik was. And that abductor said to me when I was 11 years old, it's because of your mother and your grandmother and your great grandmother. So the fact that these beings visited Eamon Refik allegedly in 1890 and told him from you to 3 generations, tied in with what was told at 11 years old. Really, that's when the program was started or accelerated. And it's interesting that they weren't grey aliens. They were allegedly reptilians, and I have a theory about them and what part they play in the program, which I expound on in the book, which may or may not be correct. Yeah, I think these reptilian beings are maybe a previous race of beings from somewhere that were subject to this program, maybe at an earlier stage. And it was so successful with them that they had been co-opted in the early times of this program, in the early years of this program, to do the work that was later done by the Greys.
And the Greys, you believe them to be kind of like worker bees, genetically engineered or something, right?
Yeah, but they do. I used to think that the small Greys were all males, if they have a gender at all, because they're no visible sexual organs. But they're one of the tall ones talks to you as an example, because you can tell whether it's a male one or a female one, which it sounds really improbable when you describe their physical characteristics, because they have no hair, they have no bodily hair, they have no sexual organs, they have no secondary sexual characteristics like breasts, or the males don't have beards or anything. You can't tell them physically apart, but when one of them talks to you, it's a male or a female. You just know. And you can't explain. All abductees say this to me. You can't explain why but you just know.
Okay. And there's a fourth one as well, right? Fourth being.
Yeah, these are the Mantids you're talking about. When abductees say one of those is present, there's only ever one in the room or in the vicinity. Only one. There's never come in little groups of three or anything. And this one has an extremely powerful mental engagement with the humans, with the abductees, and he or she is completely overpowering in terms of you. When one of them is engaging with you mentally, even from a meter away, that's all that you can deal with, because it's so overpowering. And some abductees, not true in my case, but some abductees report that these mantid beings upload them. Is it upload? He uploads and you download it.
Yeah.
A ton of information into abductees' brains about complex astrophysics or cosmology or something, or all this really, really sophisticated scientific stuff. They dump it all at once. And the abductee goes around in a daze for 3 or 4 days afterwards, trying to sort it out. And that's all they can deal with. That's all they can think about, because it's still there, trying to sort it out and make sense of it and understand it. So they have these fantastically powerful neural engagement. They're about 7 feet tall, and they're taller than any of the other beings. And they're very, very skinny, like the gray aliens, but their heads are like praying mantises. Almost all abductees say it looks like a big praying mantis, and it has this, the way of praying mantis puts its arms like that. This is where it gets its name from. The insect, and they do that, and they walk with a forward-leaning stoops. Usually, most abductees describe this, not all, but and when they engage with you mentally and they look into your eye and they do this mind scan thing, they are the most powerful of the abductors, group of abductors. And I think, speculate here, I'm not the first researcher to speculate about this. It seems to me they might be the instigators of the program.
Okay. And
these creatures.
And
why they look like praying mantises,
yeah,
we don't imagine, can't imagine. I mean, that's a completely genetically intriguing, idea that's what they look like. That's what people describe they look like, and everybody says the same thing.
And you touched on very early in our interview about some of the medical procedures that would be done to abductees, and we know that one of the features are procedures that seem to deal with human reproduction. And I've heard many times about this kind of concept of hybridization, or they're trying to create sort of a hybrid species. Walk us through that whole thing and what you think was happening versus what you think is currently happening with this kind of hybridization, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, people have talked about hybrids for 30 or 40 years now, and these are originally they looked like a cross between grey aliens and abductees, which they had alien features. So they often had big black eyes and scrawny hair, and very skinny morphology and skinny arms and so forth. And then they were more human-like and more human-like. But Andreas Luck and I have a chapter on hybridization and transgenesis in our new book, Investigating the Impossible, during which we investigate hybridization through the lens of cellular biology and genetics, and it's quite a sciencey area. It's quite a heavy science chapter, but Andreas has produced a lot of graphic illustrations describing the cellular and biological processes involved, and basically, long short of this is that hybridization of species from different biospheres is so incredibly difficult. It's probably well nigh impossible to achieve successfully. And if they did pull it off, then the resulting creatures would probably not live more than a few years before there was multiple organ failures, and would need to. They do continue to take sperm and eggs and ova from abductees even now. And from the Betty and Barney Hill case in 1961, Betty described an incision made around about her ovaries, and the abductor said he was giving her a pregnancy test.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
That's almost certainly not what this was, the procedure this was. What this procedure was almost certainly oocyte harvesting from one of the ovaries.
Right.
Through the needle. Barney Hill had a sperm sample taken during that abduction. Barney was not an abductee in the ancestral program. He was just taken opportunistically because his wife was taken. That very occasionally happens. And because they were, members of, was it the Pentecostal church or something?
I think
and
so.
Very, very devoted churchgoers. And this was 1960s. He insisted that John Fuller remove that part of the narrative from his book. Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know that. Okay.
And it was only 30 years after Barney had died that Betty revealed this to the world. She said that John Fuller was asked to remove the sperm taking procedure from the interrupted journey prior to publication. So that nobody knew that the Hills had oocytes and sperm taken. But this is a regular thing with abductees. I mean, some male abductees tell me they're taken and they're told during the abduction, we just want some seed from you, and you can go back this time. That's what we're going to do, and they take it.
Wow. And
there are all sorts of procedures they have for getting sperm out of male abductees, including when abductees have had surgical vasectomies. They have this way of inserting a needle into the testes, the area just behind the scrotum, and taking it directly from the testes without any seminal fluid or seminal plasma. So they know what they're doing where humans' physiology is concerned. They really understand what they're doing in ways that most of us don't understand our bodies work, but they really understand this stuff,
And so the hybridization part, talk about that.
Thank you for bringing it back to it.
Yeah.
If hybridization is so difficult as to make it and impossible to make creatures survive for long, or certainly to survive into a second generation, or certainly not to survive for more than a year. How do you explain these hybrids that allegedly have been taught to really created to live in human society and integrate themselves within our society? And what we've come up with is not hybridization, but transgenesis. That's what they do is they take sperm from a male abductee, oocytes from a female abductee, unite them, and make fertilization and make a zygote. At the very early stage in the zygote, usually after a few cell divisions, it's feasible for them to introduce a few genes that are not normally put in humans. We don't know whether these are synthetic or whether they're alien genes or what they are, but it's conceivable to do that, and it's conceivable to therefore make these creatures completely telepathic and make them able to control humans with their minds and give them a lot of other abilities. And they look and behave exactly like we do, exactly like humans, look exactly like we do, and they age at the same rate as we do, and so forth. And if they're transgenic beings, they're not technically hybridized. What a hybrid is, as an example, is a mule, which is 50% horse and 50% donkey. And when you get a mule, a donkey and a horse mating, and the resulting offspring is a mule, it's really obvious that it's half and half. It really looks like half horse and half a mule. These hybrids, these transgenic beings don't look like that. They look like humans. They look like humans. And so we're speculating in our book and investigating the impossible that this is how it's done. This is how it's done by introducing some genes into the zygote at an early stage, and the zygote can then become an embryo, and it can be gestated in a tank of fluid. And it can be placed in a human female for the period of the first trimester, which we think is still done to thousands of women a year across the world, maybe even millions, because the woman reports that she's pregnant, and she has a positive pregnancy test, from the pharmacy, and the urogynecologist says, yes, you're definitely pregnant. And this is the first trimester, and they can establish what date it was probably conceived. And then after about the first trimester, about 10 weeks, it's gone. The woman wakes up in the morning and it's gone. There's no blood. There's no abortion, there's nothing there to show for it. There's no, hormone levels return to normal. It's just disappeared. It's literally disappeared overnight. And this is where the abductees abduct the woman again, the abductee again, and they remove it, and they put her back in the morning. And she never knows. And before the bump even shows publicly, why they value placing the embryo in a human female for the first trimester and then removing it, we really don't know. I've got some ideas about it, and Andreas has got different ideas about it. But if you read Investigating the Impossible, you can get the full story about what might be really going on here and why.
Yeah, sure. And you note in the book that these hybrids are breeding directly with unwitting human partners. How would I know if I'm married, but how would one know if you're mating with a hybrid?
I can't answer. Where is that? Is that in Out of Time? Which?
Yeah, chapter? I don't have the chapter noted. I think it was
I've not read it
towards
for
the
years.
end. Yeah, I don't have a note.
I'm probably reporting what abductees are saying. Some abductees are saying and reporting.
Okay.
I have no personal experience of that myself, so I can only report what people say. And
Right.
maybe they're misguided, maybe they're mistaken, maybe they're onto something. It seems like if the aliens or the abductors, whoever they are, whether they're from a different universe, whether they're from a different dimension or whatever they are, it seems that they're making humans 100% look like humans and behave like humans and can speak with their mouths or learn to speak with their mouths, learn to speak vocally, and integrating them slowly into human society. Some of them are successful and some of them aren't so successful, apparently. That one of the things they're going to do is breed with humans in the end. Maybe they're not going to do that. We don't really know what the plan is, or whether the abductors have a plan worked out. They might have an idea about what their own ultimate objectives are, but they might not understand what every stage of the process is going to involve. And the program might have evolved and changed according to what they find they're having to deal with. But their objective is to get into the human world and somehow take some sort of guiding control over it. It's pretty obvious that that's what they're doing. You look at all the evidence.
Do you think that sorry to interrupt again. Do you think the world governments are aware of exactly what is going on?
That's a good question. Do you have any ideas about it? You're closer to some of these people than I am.
I personally think they are fully aware, and I would say that is one of the primary reasons for the secrecy is the abduction phenomenon. In my personal opinion, and others as well.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah,
I'd agree with that. Yeah,
and I think you noted as well that that you think you've been surveilled. Am I correct in that, or am I misremembering? That you've been surveilled by, you've been surveilled by government or contractors or anything. I thought I remembered that in the book, but I don't know.
Yeah, when Robert Hastings came to stay with us in England about 10 years ago, can't remember exactly when it was. I think it's maybe 12 years ago. No, it's 2014, because we went to Normandy on that trip, and we had what was probably a dual abduction in the place we stayed in Normandy. That's also involved a close-up sighting of a UFO in an extremely disturbed night that Robert and I had. My wife, who was always with us, slept right through, and she wouldn't even go near us in the morning. She said, we felt like something had happened overnight. We came back to England, and Robert had agreed to meet with an A-list journalist that was working for the London Times, then the leader writer for the London Times, and he met with us on a Monday evening, which is the quietest evening of the week for bars and restaurants. He met with us in a venue in Richmond-on-Thames, which is an enclave in southwest London, near where this journalist actually lives with his family. And we sat down at the table and we started our meeting. There was myself, there's my wife, there was Robert, and there was this guy who I call, in the book, I call him Nathan. I don't reveal his real name. He knows who he is. So as we were talking, a guy, the bar was almost empty. Like we had 20 odd tables, and they were quite large tables, like dining tables. It was almost empty. And the guy came in, sat right next to us at the next table. And then he ostentatiously put on a pair of headphones and got a box out of his bag and put it on the table and stared at us like that.
Wow.
And after about half an hour, we started looking at him. I started looking at him, and then Robert started looking at him. And the journalist didn't notice any of this, or appeared not to. And the guy started to get visibly uncomfortable, and he got up and packed his gear away and left. And immediately he was replaced by another one.
Oh, wow. Same seat and everything? Okay.
Same seat, same equipment, different guy.
Right.
Same issue. And so we finished our meeting, and a couple of other people came into the bar during that time and sat down. But I mean, the bar had capacity for 200 people sitting down, and there was like 5 of us in the whole place, so there's another couple of people came in because, it was Monday evening, and it's a very quiet, nice week for, going out and enjoying yourself. It's the quietest night in the entertainment world, usually. So as we left, we said our goodbyes, and we started walking back to our cars because we came in my car, and the journalist came in his car, and they were parked in different streets just nearby. And as we were walking, this guy, the first guy who sat down next to us and then disappeared for a couple of hours, walked up behind us, and he trod on the back of Robert's foot and made his shoe come off.
Wow.
On the street. He didn't apologize. He didn't say anything. He just did that. And then he walked off.
Amazing.
And you can ask Robert for his version of this story, which is pretty much identical to mine because he was
sure.
there.
Wow. Yeah. He when I was out visiting him,
somebody was listening to us and wanted it to be known that we were being observed and listened to, and wanted it to be known that our phone calls had been intercepted.
Yeah.
And knew about the meeting.
Yeah.
It was obvious that they wanted us to know that.
Yeah.
That we were what we were up to was known about.
Yeah, I have had that same experience in a different way, but with this Daily Mail article that we published. In towards the end here, and I didn't write down the chapter number. I did. In chapter 3, you have a 35-item checklist titled "Finding Out That You're One of the Chosen Ones." And I'm sure some of the viewers tonight, or when they order your book, that's probably going to be one of the first chapters they jump to find out whether, hey, am I one of the chosen ones? Walk us through some of those.
I don't have a book in front of me, but yes, I do actually. So here, because my memory is not. One of the things is people have experienced a period of missing time.
Yes,
somehow in their lives when they can't remember where they were or what they were doing.
Yeah, chapter 3 is what I have.
Yeah, I've got it. Yeah. They often have a compulsive fascination with. Oh, sorry, that's a later. I'll start at the beginning because I'm not sure we'll go through all 35 unless there's time for this. Many people report fear or unease when they travel down a particular stretch of road for no obvious reason, save for a vague impression that something strange and disturbing had happened to them there in the past. For some, this phobia is so severe that they will often take a detour of several miles. I've got all this stuff from talking to abductees, 30-odd abductees in Israel over the years. A compulsion to fulfill a secret mission in life, but don't know exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm.
A deep feeling of having a calling that one day will be revealed, or a feeling that they are somehow special.
Okay.
As an extension to point 3, some have a deep feeling that one day a great cataclysm or change will happen in which they will be required to act or assist. And when that day arrives, they will know what to do.
I've heard that, yeah.
Many develop psychic abilities or an interest in them and feel ashamed or embarrassed at admitting this. Many become attracted to religions and mysticism, spiritualism, or the occult, and sometimes investigate these areas of belief to the degree that they join a local congregation temple, or group.
Oh, wow.
After a time, they leave and move on because they find no answers to the core of what is troubling them.
Wow. Yeah.
Attraction to, or even commitment to environmentalism is common, and some become politically active and many become vegetarian.
Yeah, I've heard that one as well. Yeah.
Many admit to having powerful recurrent dreams of planetary thermonuclear war or a large-scale destruction from environmental disasters. So they put this stuff in your mind during abductions.
Yeah.
Many report recurrent dreams of flying through the air or levitating, emphasizing that these dreams are accompanied by physiological sensations similar to those experienced in the pit of the stomach while ascending in a fast elevator. They find, or more often, usually their partners or family members, to discover unusual marks on their bodies, such as scars, scoop marks, laser-like straight-line cuts on limbs or back, and are unable to explain how or when they had occurred. They sometimes wake up with bruises, sometimes quite large and painful, or fresh burn marks, especially around wrists, upper arms, or ankles, none of which they can explain. Abductees have been known to wake up from deep sleep with actual fractures.
Wow.
Usually in their limb extremities, like fingered bones or toes.
Amazing. Wow.
Some wake with leaves, twigs, or soil in the bed, as if they have been outside during the night and brought these back into bed with them.
Interesting. Okay.
Do you want me to go on?
Maybe just a few more. A few more of the really interesting ones. But this is pretty crazy.
They awake with their night clothes on backwards or inside out, or else folded on a nearby chair, or occasionally an item of jewelry or clothing will be missing and never subsequently be found. Some have woken up wearing strange clothes that do not belong to them. I've had this about 3 or 4 times, not personally, but I've had this reported to me 3 or 4 times. People wake up, they didn't buy these clothes, they've never worn them, and they wake up wearing them, and they don't know where they came from.
Wow.
I mean, it's quite difficult to go through it. You see, when you have all these kind of experiences, you have no idea what is going on. You have no idea. Why do you end up living this really weird life that nobody can make sense of? Then you discover the alien abduction phenomenon and the alien abduction thing and all the things that to do with it. Immediately, everything makes sense. All this stuff
comes together.
Sense. Immediately. It is not uncommon for those experiencing a missing time episode while awake and then going about their daily business to discover later that items of jewelry are missing or wrongly fastened. For an example, one abductee discovered upon arriving home 2 hours late that her earrings were fitted with a post and clasp reversed. Another that his shirt buttons were misaligned and his wristwatch strap was done up the wrong way round so that the watch face appeared upside down as he looked at it. See, how does a normal person make sense of that when they got dressed in the morning?
Yeah.
A significant minority found themselves on at least one occasion locked out of their homes in the middle of the night, wearing their night clothes, in some cases obliging them to resort to forced entry into their own home. One abductee I know found himself in the garden and locked out of the family home in the middle of the night on 2 separate occasions when he was a child.
Wow.
And it goes on.
Yeah. Well, clearly... clearly the tall grays have not done a perfect job of genetically engineering the little grays if they're making those kinds of rudimentary mistakes. So I think
say so.
Yeah, I think they're in need of an upgrade. Now your book ends with 5 words, and it says, "We may be out of time." So this disclosure movement in Washington has spin up about 2 years now, arguing about a different word, biologics, all that sort of thing. But they mean it in the way that David Grush testified about it in 2023, that there are dead recovered tissue from crash retrieval sites. And you use the same word to mean, abductee, scoop biopsies, and implants. Are you frustrated at all that the disclosure movement or whatever has co-opted the term to mean something completely different than what you actually document in this book?
Well, I think, if what my research the past 15 years has borne out is that, all this stuff is real, and there's too many people report these things for it not to be real. And the evidence, the physical, forensic, scientific evidence is so strong. Where if you get things laboratory analyzed, which I've done on a number of occasions, which we discussed earlier with the implants and the hairs and so forth. So if it's real, it's going to come out in the end.
Right.
It has to.
It has to.
You can't hide something. If it's continuing. What's changed about the phenomenon, just to probably end on this, is these transgenic beings who look exactly like humans, but are basically serving the alien agenda because they're part of the program. They have now replaced the grey aliens in some abduction events completely. So abductees are taken and dealt with only by these transgenic beings who look exactly like humans, and there's no grey aliens involved. I have to say that that's not my experience, but a number of abductees tell me that that is what they're going through. I had a German abductee contacted me in London about 15 years ago, quite early on in this, way before I wrote the book. She'd seen me contributing to a chat forum on the alien abduction subjects in the early days, of my interest in it. And she reached out to me, and we met up in London, and she was working in the finance industry. She said almost all her experiences are with what she termed the human-looking ones. She said, nobody talks about the human-looking ones. What about the human-looking ones?
Right.
So she actually knew that they were the abductors. Wow. One and the same, but they just looked like us.
I'm curious. So you've had David Grush testify in front of Congress, whistleblower David Grush. You've had others, and then you also had this Schumer-Rounds amendment called the UAP Disclosure Act that was, completely tossed out. Now, of course, you have President Trump, whose administration has released 2 batches of videos and PDFs and whatnot. From where you're sitting in Lincolnshire, is disclosure happening, or do you think it is stalled?
Well, to be honest, none of my neighbors in this village care about it or have any concern with it. They don't watch it doesn't have that much cover on the UK, in the UK media, like the newspapers aren't what they were in terms of circulation numbers. Network television isn't watched by as many people as it was. So, the internet is infinitely fragmented, and people who are interested in everything that's happening with disclosure and files being released go to the websites where they can find out about that, and listen to the talking heads on the subject. And people who are not interested in it can completely avoid it, and make themselves unaware of it because they're not interested.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to say, whether disclosure is happening or not. I don't think what's been released so far, from what I've seen, is that different to what's appeared in books about UFOs for the past 60 years. I think, the objects being tracked by radar and flying around military jets and so forth, and diving in and out of the ocean. These have been reported in books about the subject for many decades now. I've yet to see anything really astounding. Maybe I've just missed it because,
No.
there's a lot.
You haven't missed a thing. I mean, there in the second batch, there were a few things that were definitely did not look prosaic. But as I was speaking with a whistleblower recently, this whistleblower was aware of two videos that this person said would completely settle the triangle debate. There would be no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So Steve, if I were to
debate.
The triangle UAP. So Steve, if I were to make a call with one of my contacts in Washington, and this person had the authority to declassify everything, and I flew you into town and said, "Okay, Steve, you have 3 minutes sitting across from this person. What would you tell them?"
I'd have to rehearse that and think about it. The alien abduction subject is received less exposure than it deserves. It's happening to millions of people, and it's a real thing. And it's the most important thing about the UAP presence, because it's the thing that intrudes in our lives and human society at the deepest level. I know it's scary, but it's happening.
Yeah, it is.
What are you going to do? What are you going to do about it? See, I acknowledge that if the UAP phenomenon is acknowledged officially in the United States, it will probably be replicated by governments around the world. But we're back to the incurious thing. A lot of people are definitively incurious about this, and some people will say, "Yeah, I always knew that was so. They always knew they were hiding aliens. I always knew that those flying saucers were real," which is the title of one of Donald Keyhoe's books in the 1950s. Flying saucers are real.
Right.
Way back, almost 100 years ago. So if you acknowledge that all these astounding tales of vessels diving into water and coming out of the ocean and traveling at hundreds of miles an hour, apparently underwater past nuclear submarines and so forth, which reports of those are very credible. If all this stuff is acknowledged to be happening, then the next question millions of people are going to ask is, okay, what about abductions then? Are they real or not?
Yeah. It's the natural thing to that should come across people's way. Say again.
If these flying saucers, we're being visited from somewhere, if these are real, what about the abduction thing that millions of people talk about? Is that real or not? And if it's that's the obvious question.
It is,
which will demand answers. Yeah,
it is, and
maybe nobody's ready to deal with that. Officially ready to deal.
But they're going to have to. I mean, it's clearly happening. Again, I firmly believe that is one of the core reasons for the cover up and the lengths of the really dirty things that our governments have done to keep this thing out there. But Steve, it's really been a pleasure having you out. So, Steve, your book is out. Your book is Out of Time: The Intergenerational Abduction Program Explored from Grosvenor House, if I'm saying that right. Grosvenor. Okay.
It's an eccentric spelling. Grosvenor House.
Grosvenor House Publishing, and then you have your new book out with Dr. Andreas Luck. Investigating the Impossible is out as well. How do folks find this book? It's not on Amazon because of some sneaky stuff Amazon may have done.
The Grosvenor House publication is sold by Amazon.
Oh, it is. Good.
The ISBN numbers from the 2023 edition, the second edition, are completely different to the and it's not published by Kindle Direct Publishing, and Amazon's selling it amazingly. I mean, they sold the second edition straight away.
Okay.
I don't know whether they just didn't, their systems, probably because their ISBN numbers are completely different. Maybe they recognize them as different products from a different author. I don't know why. I can't explain that, but the Amazon, I've sold 4,000 books through Amazon.com.
Okay.
Copies of Out of Time through Amazon.com. So, and the new book is doing really well. So
Okay.
it's only been on the market since April the 2nd. So we can get them all from Amazon, or you can get them from Barnes and Noble, or you can walk into a high street bookstore and order them from the high street bookstore.
Okay, well, I'm super glad to hear that people can get it on Amazon. I thought that was not the case, so I'm very, very happy that was finally solved. And let's not tell. If you go on any other podcast, don't mention the new ISBN number in case what's his name, the CEO of Amazon, is watching. Let's keep that on the down low.
Mr. Bezos.
That's right. Yeah, Mr. Bezos.
We've got, I've got two websites as well. One is outoftimebook.info and the other is investigatingtheimpossible.info. That second website is very informative and is quite, it's quite extensive, and both contain ordering details.
Okay, great.
And links to how to order it.
Okay, yeah, and we'll be sure to put those links in the YouTube description. Okay. Well, Steve, it's been an honor having you on the show. This is definitely, I would say, at least a 2-part interview that we'll be breaking it up. There's just such a wealth of information, and I have to just say thank you for your bravery in telling your story, and I think in many ways, people that have wondered, hey, did something happen to me, or maybe it didn't. I think that reading these books, hearing it from someone like yourself, a serious researcher, people can go, you know what, I'm not crazy. This did happen to me. Yes. And there's strength in numbers. This has happened to certainly millions of people. There is zero doubt about that. But again, thank you very much for coming on the show. And I hope the weather cools off there. It sounds like it's a little unbearable.
It's midnight now. It's
okay.
12 midnight.
All right. Well,
so it's a little cooler. Thank you.
A little cooler. Well. Thanks for staying up with us so late.
We're looking forward to 35 degrees tomorrow. That's 105 Fahrenheit tomorrow.
Oh boy, yeah. Well, yeah. It's much cooler here in Southern California, but I won't keep you up any later. Truly appreciate you coming on the show, and it has been my honor.
Thank you for inviting me on, Matt. It's been a great pleasure.
Folks, if you just watched both parts of our conversation with Steve Aspin, you already know that this isn't a man asking you to take anything on faith. He took this evidence into laboratories, he put it in a book, and that book was pulled off Amazon overnight in 2023 over most likely the forensic evidence in its appendices. It's back now on Amazon, so you can find it there, but you have to ask yourself, why a book like that gets erased? Read it and make up your own mind. Thank you for tuning in, and if you love what we do here, hit that subscribe button. I'm Matt Ford. This has been The Good Trouble Show. We'll see you next time.